It won't be long and you'll be sharing your baby with everyone else in your life, but you're trying to find out if you should find out your baby's gender or reveal your baby's name. But if we haven't hung out before, my name's Brianna. I'm a fellow mom and money coach, and here we answer questions from moms for moms. But I'd like to invite you to contribute to today's conversation in the comments and add any advice for anyone else that comes across this episode. But with that, let's go ahead and dive into today's topic. Our first question comes from Chloe. She writes, I'm really torn about whether we should find out the gender of our baby. One of my friends said it made her labor easier not knowing, but others have said it helped them bond with their baby ahead of time. If we find out, I think it'll be really hard for us not to spill the beans. Okay, Chloe, I think that wherever you stand on finding out or not finding out, what makes this choice so challenging is like once you make a decision and you have the information, you can't go back and just take that information out of your brain, right? Like it's either an all or nothing situation. So, some parents feel a lot of pressure making this decision before they go to their ultrasound, where they would possibly find out the gender of their baby. And one way that I've heard of moms kind of navigating around this like pressure of having that decision made and not really knowing, like, being concerned that they might change their mind after their appointment is to have the ultrasound tech write down the answer and then put it into an envelope, seal the envelope, and then give it to the parents. So having the answer in an envelope still gives them some autonomy over that decision and knowing like, okay, if they do feel very secure in their decision, either one way or the other. If they decide that they're ready to know, they can always open the envelope at that point in time. So I think that the first thing is just like recognizing that you do have options and you don't have to stress about figuring out or making a decision when you go to that initial ultrasound, that you can decide later if you want. At that anatomy ultrasound, where they are going to determine the gender, they will probably also check out different areas of your baby's body. Like that's one of the main reasons for that specific ultrasound, is to make sure the baby's growing healthy and there's no complications in their development. So if you're undecided, or if you kind of are just like, I don't think I want to know, then let that ultrasound tech know that before they even start your scan. So that way, when they're looking on the monitor for certain parts of the baby's anatomy, they can kind of let you know ahead of time, and you can turn your face away from the screen. So that way you don't spoil the possible surprise. Now, I have heard from other moms that they go into the scan and they don't want to know. And the way their baby is positioned, there's just like no way that they don't know. Like it's very obvious one way or the other. I think it kind of depends a lot on the positioning of the baby and possibly how well trained the mom's eye is. Like if she's had several different children and has gotten used to looking at some scans, you know a little bit more of what to look for different features, because sometimes those scans are really challenging to make out like what's going on. Is that a foot? Is that a hand? Is that a knee? What are we exactly looking at? And then other moms can like look at it and be like, oh yeah, I see that's this part of the baby's body right there. That has been a couple of different ways that I've heard some moms navigate that whole situation. I really wanted to find out what we were having before giving birth. Like, I was not the type of person that I wanted to be surprised, although I understand parents and moms that make that choice. So I went into our scans expecting one answer and got a completely different answer. And let me tell you, it was a little shocking sitting there, especially when you feel like, oh, I know what we're having. Like how. Like mother's intuition has to be right? And then finding out you're completely wrong. Like it was very helpful for me to have that information ahead of time. And I think also for my husband as well. So that way we could have a better understanding and like adjust our expectations as we got closer to giving birth to, well, me giving birth to our baby. And I do feel like it really did help me have this like like more like maternal bonding experience, knowing like, oh, I'm having a boy. Like I can like think of all of the things and ways to like look forward to the experience. And I didn't think that it reduced my excitement for labor in any means. Now, I know that some moms may feel completely differently, but I'm just going to tell you my experience. And that is that I was so curious and excited to see what my baby looked like, see if our baby looked like the name that we had picked out for him, bonding and meeting him for the first time, that for me, like not knowing, waiting until birth wouldn't have necessarily made that birthing experience or made my excitement for our baby to be born any better. Now, one thing you did say was that you're really concerned that it would be hard for you guys not to spill the beans. So if you did find out, some questions I would have for you is, would you be telling your friends and family before your baby's born what you're expecting on having, if it's going to be a boy or a girl? Or would you be doing a gender reveal party? Like, what specifically would you be concerned about, like slipping and saying if you found out? Because if you're waiting to do a gender reveal party with everybody else, again, you could choose not to know and still have a gender reveal party and you be surprised. Or if you're concerned about it slipping out and ruining the surprise at the gender reveal party, you could have whatever way you're going to do the reveal. If you're going to bake it into a cake, like the baker could know, and then you could actually find out right before the gender reveal party. So that way you could have that individual moment with you and your spouse before everybody is finding out. Like there's lots of different ways of kind of maneuvering these situations. I think sometimes as parents, we feel very much like it's, oh, we have this choice or this choice, and then there's no other options. Like you have so many different variables for how you can actually approach how you want to make this choice in your life. So with our first, we're going to do the gender reveal at the baby shower, and we didn't want anybody to know what we were having, boy or girl. And we definitely didn't want our registry kind of giving away if we were having a boy or girl and ruining the surprise. So we actually completed our registry before we even went to that anatomy ultrasound and found out, because we didn't want there to be any specific clues on the things that people were going to be purchasing for us. And also, side note, I wanted a lot of like gender neutral things, because since we were planning on having more kids, I didn't want to have to like only have pink or only have blue and not be able to kind of cross use some products or some toys and clothes. So those are some options and alternatives for you. And if any other mom is listening has any other advice or suggestions, please drop them down below and help Chloe out. Now, if you're a mom that's like, I can't wait until that anatomy ultrasound, like I need to know right now. Because I mean, like I said, I was a little surprised, wondering if my mom intuition was right and being completely wrong and thrown off guard. So there are a couple of fun ways of like trying to figure out your baby's gender ahead of time. Now, keep in mind that all of these options that we're going to discuss is for entertainment purposes. The best way to get a medically accurate reading is to go to a medical professional. Now that I have that disclaimer out of the way, one of them is through a wedding ring test, where you let the wedding ring spin over your belly or your hand. Now, I can't remember if we ended up trying this when I was pregnant or not, because I do recall hearing about it before I was even like ready to have kids, which is kind of like more of like a wives' tale. Again, entertainment purposes. Okay, don't go staking like all of your baby products on the accuracy of these tests. Another option that I have found and have heard about is, doing some like pee tests. So basically, this powder you put into your pee, kind of similar like when you have a urine test to see if you're pregnant. And if it is blue, then it is one gender, and if it's green, it's another gender. Now, some people have said that like it's really hard to read the test or the results weren't accurate. And then there's also like a blood test that you can do, and kind of it determines if there's enough hormones in it, then you're having a boy. And if there are a if there's like not certain male hormones found in the blood sample, then you're having a girl. Now, the only challenge with these tests that I have found is that you have to be very careful about how you complete the test, and you have to make sure that you don't like cross contaminate it. So they're not getting, your husband's hormones or, bodily fluid in with your sample that's going to the lab, because then you could get a bad reading. So that's why I say, like, these tests should only be done for your entertainment. And if you actually do need a test to find out the details, like for you specifically, then I definitely recommend getting that through your doctor or a medical provider directly versus using these over-the-counter order products. But they are super fun to find out and just like, test, like, are they right? Are they wrong? Like, which one? Because I have heard of some moms doing several and getting several different results. So I don't know. Is that more frustrating or is it not more frustrating? Because also, if you think you got one result on the test and then you find out later it's not, like, that can also be challenging too. So I don't know. Let me know what you would decide for you, or if you've used any of them in the comments below. All right, so our next question comes from Kylie. She says, we finally picked a name for our peanut. Part of me thinks it would be so fun to share the baby's name at the gender reveal party, but the other part of me is worried if they don't like it, they might pressure us to change it. Oh, Kylie. Well, first, let me say, I love that you call your little baby Peanut. I think it's so cute when moms like find tiny, like little, like, nicknames to name their little growing baby. I felt like for me, it just like really helped me bond with my babies. So here's the thing with the names, I feel pretty strongly that I didn't want to share our baby's name until after our baby was born. And here's why. So when it came to my husband being born, he actually remained unnamed in the hospital. He says like 3 days. I don't know that his mom stayed in the hospital that long. I guess it is possible. But because she had picked out a name, saw him after he was born and was like, oh no, that's not his name. He doesn't look like whatever name they had picked out. And then they had to kind of come up with another name before they left the hospital. Now that kind of got me onto like this whole research trail where I was like, how long can babies actually go unnamed in the United States? And apparently there's no federal standard because it's all determined by the states. And some states have like thresholds of up to a year, which I thought that was insane. Like not naming your baby for an entire year, like, wow. My husband having that experience, I was really concerned of sharing our baby's name and then our baby's being born and then being like, that name just doesn't fit them. We need to figure out something else. So I wanted to give ourselves kind of like the freedom to choose and change our minds. So we came up with a couple of different names that we liked for both of our cowboys before they were born. And then we did for both of my sons decide on what their names were going to be before they were born. And then after we saw them, we were like, okay, yep, these are the names. Although with my second, we picked out a name, and as his birth drew closer, I was like, this doesn't feel right. There's just like this name just doesn't feel right. And so we ended up changing it. Now, I am so glad that we didn't tell anybody first, because I feel like it gives us as parents the freedom to change our minds. And I would have felt so bad if any of our friends, or if my son's grandparents, or if anyone had like gotten a gift that had our baby's name on it, and then if we decided to change it and then that gift didn't, correlate to our baby's name, that's a lot of pressure. To me, I would feel like that's a lot of pressure. And especially if like some grandparents are really crafty, if they spent a lot of time and energy, like some grandmothers I've heard like will quilt the baby's name into, a handmade quilt, or grandfathers will carve the baby's name into something. Like it's not unusual to receive something at a baby registry or before your baby's born that has your baby's name on it if it's already been announced to family members and friends. And I just trying to be a little bit more mindful. I just did not want to have that pressure on me or my husband to feel like we couldn't change our baby's name if we didn't feel like it was quite right after meeting our baby for the first time. So that was the reasons that we personally made that decision. But I have also heard of other moms saying that they don't share their babies' names with their friends or with their extended family because they're concerned that people will steal their baby's name. And to be honest, this might also have been a little bit of a factor in my own situation. Especially if you have a lot of friends or a lot of extended family where, you're around the birthing age of other people or other people are very similar stages and everyone's having babies around the same time. I was just like, I don't want to give away my baby's name. I don't want someone else to steal it. But maybe for you, saying the baby's name that you have chosen, especially if you're very confident, like, yes, I love this name. I know that this is the baby's name. Like, we're not going to change our minds, etc. Like, it might reserve the baby's name so that way other people don't take it. I have heard of situations like that. So kind of weighing where you stand in the situations that's happening around you as you are preparing for your baby can help you make that decision for your situation. But I love to hear other moms thoughts and comments on this. What did you decide? Why did you decide that? What all were the factors that kind of helped you, that influenced your decision one way or the other? Now, one thing that you did say was that you're concerned that if you share your baby's name, that other people might pressure you into changing it. So my question would be is there a history of other people pressuring you to change your mind? Because if there is, then yes, that should be a huge factor in your decision, because there's some people that are just super stubborn, very vocal about their opinion, and it doesn't matter how other people live their life or the decisions that they make, they're going to let everybody know if they agree or not. So in that case, I probably that would be a factor of determining what I'm going to share and what I'm not going to share, because that's a lot of sometimes pressure to put up with depending on how or what relationship you have to that person and how often you see them during the course of your pregnancy. Now, if it's more just a perceived pressure, even if people don't necessarily agree, that they're not going to say something and it's just going to be kind of this subliminal things or feeling that you're picking up on, this is where it gets a little bit more challenging, because I would question whether or not it's actually being perceived by other people that they don't like it or that they think you should pick something else or change your mind, or if it's simply simply something that you personally need to work on internally, because sometimes we perceive things that other people aren't even saying or aren't even trying to send subliminal messages to us. It's all in our own minds. So if you already feel that pressure and nobody says anything, or if you ask your spouse and say hey, were you picking up on this? If nobody said anything, do you feel when we make a decision or when we announce something for our family that if so-and-so doesn't agree, that it's very known even if they aren't vocally saying it? So if there's someone else with you, your spouse, that can verify oh yeah, I was picking up on that too, then that's a really good way of knowing that okay, it's not just something in your mind that you are projecting on other people. It's actually accurate, that they're sending subliminal messages, whether they're trying to or not, about whether or not they agree or disagree with your decision. So I don't necessarily have any advice, but I think recognizing how where is this pressure coming from for whether or not you should or shouldn't, or whether or not people are going to like or not like the baby's name, I think is an important part of making this decision. Because when it comes to parenting, once your baby's born, you're going to have to put up with a lot more than just navigating who does and doesn't like your baby's name that you chose. Like there's going to be a lot worse things. But if you can kind of eliminate some of these more tougher conversations that you really don't have to have until after your baby's born, when these things matter, then I might make the decision not to even tell, so I don't have to have that confrontation with somebody about my future child until they're born and it's on a topic that actually makes sense. Now, okay, when I say makes sense, like the name is a big deal. Okay, I'm not trying to minimize what you choose to name your child. I'm just saying like it's a lot easier to just say like, "Oh, we're not sharing our name," than to like once your baby is born, try to navigate another really important decision that you're making as their parent. Now, I do have a really good piece of advice from another mom on this topic. So, Terry says, a lot of folks want good news and to share a bit of an experience with you or to support you. Figure out what you are willing to share. A switch in conversation signals the end to a previous topic. If these things don't work, graciously excuse yourself, then get up and walk away, hang up the phone, or end the texting session. She also suggests a quick and easy way to like redirect is to ask their advice about something, which I thought this was so helpful because if you are in a situation where you have communicated something about your baby or your boundaries to a friend or family member and they are just not getting it, sometimes the best choice really is to walk away. But depending on like the situation, like sometimes that's not appropriate or you just don't feel like that's something that you can do. Or you may not feel quite assertive enough to do. And I love the fact that she suggests like a quick and easy way to redirect the conversation is to ask their advice about something, because typically people that are going to feel assertive enough to challenge you on your own decision as a mom or as a parent are also going to be very willing to share their advice on something else. And the fact that you're basically encouraging them to share advice on something that you're actually interested in will usually really redirect their conversation, and they'll be very willing to talk about this other thing, this other way that they can actually help and support and assist you than to be really kind of attacking your decision. So it kind of puts you, instead of in a place of trying to like defend yourself, it puts you alongside them. So that way they're sharing friend to friend versus like you trying to defend your position as a parent and your decision or boundary that you're making for your child. Now, as you go through pregnancy, your body is going to change and your cravings are going to change pretty drastically too. So if you're interested in hearing more about weird cravings or possibly predicting what gender you're going to have based off of what you specifically want to eat, or some other wives' tales about what your cravings could mean, then I'll link up that episode for you to watch next. But until we hang out again, create a home your heart loves.